Hey everybody, and welcome to the Ryan Kai Show. I'm your host Ryan, here with my co-host Kyle, and today we're talking about the NBA draft and all the results from that. And a little bit later, we're going to be heading in and talking about some of the awards that were handed out during the NBA awards show. So to kick it off, I'm going to ask my co-host Kyle, what were some of the big steals and or big takeaways you took from the draft?
Really, to me, the draft, it went pretty much as planned, I think. It wasn't that big a change from what most of the mock drafts showed. I was kind of hoping that maybe there'd be more of a shakeup at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I did notice how there weren't a lot of trades or anything happening.
Yeah.
I was projecting a lot more.
I mean, the biggest curveball to me was Trae Young being drafted as high as 5 in that trade from the Dallas Mavericks.
I found that to be weird
Atlanta.
because, they were projecting the mock drafts just before, the draft happened. The days before, they were talking about Trae Young maybe slipping all the way to the Clippers at, their position.
Right.
I don't know. I just wasn't expecting, I thought they were better point guards. I think...
Yeah.
Gildress Alexander was better. I think Sexton was better in my opinion. They had the body of work to play defense.
Yeah.
So.
You knew Trae Young was going to attract someone to jump on him early.
I was expecting the Magic, though. Because they don't have a point guard on the roster. They have Augustine, and that's all they have.
That was a little bit of a shock, seeing the Magic take Mahamba Bamba.
Well, everyone thought they were going to take Sexton, and they didn't even touch Sexton.
Yeah. Going for Bamba, though, I don't know if that's a bad pick. I like Bamba. I like his style of play. He's fun. He's energetic. You don't really have anyone on that team that's can be that athletic guy. He's a good rim defender. It just seems strange to me that they went with Bamba, considering they have Vujicic down there at the center, and he's their premier player. He's the only premier player in Orlando.
Okay.
So that seemed weird.
So let's talk about the big story of the draft. And, there were a few big stories, but the big story is going to be, obviously, DeAndre Ayton going number 1. That's what got most of media time, got most of the attention.
Right.
Everyone's excited to see if he's the next installment of Shaq and Kobe, him and Devin Booker.
I don't like the Shaq and Kobe comparison. Booker's not Kobe. He doesn't have the assassin's mentality. He's a great scorer, but he's not Kobe. So I don't think that's a fair comparison for Booker. Ayton hasn't proved to be Shaq dominant.
But he has a lot of the physical features that Shaq had coming into his first season.
Let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's wait and see what Ayton can do.
People forget Shaq was a dominant defensive player too. He knew how to block shots, and it was.
That's right.
Ayton does not shown that yet.
I just want to see what he can do. See a couple of years. I thought Joel Embiid's tweet to DeAndre Ayton was hilarious.
Funny.
That was hilarious. Calling him out, saying, "Don't compare me and Ayton. I play defense." Because he's right. Ayton hasn't shown that elite defensive, and in a draft that had so many bigs with defensive ability, Bamba and who's the other guy? That guy that got drafted really late that was really high in blocks, Robert. Williams.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is a great shot blocker too.
You had a lot of bigs that played
Williams
defense.
went to Celtics, late in the draft.
Yeah, Robert Williams, and there was a lot of guys out there, and Ayton's not one of them. He's just so dominant, and he gives you that 20-10 ability.
Yeah, to be honest, Ayton still had almost 2 blocks a game at Arizona. He can play defense. Just he showed the lack of motivation to play defense.
When you're talking about 7-footers in college, you really want to see higher numbers than that, though. You're looking high 2s or low 3s or close to 4 for some of these guys.
Jaren Jackson walked out of college. I think he had 3 blocks per game 3 blocks per game.
Yeah.
When he was at Michigan State, so...
Yeah, and I think Bamba was close to 4 blocks a game, 3.7, something along those lines. And, 3.7 blocks a game. And to me, that's where Ayton needs to improve. Was he deserving of the number 1 pick? For sure.
And it is a perfect fit for, Phoenix, too.
Oh, he's a great fit.
It's almost like the perfect fit with Mikal Bridges, too. You were born...
that's a
he
story.
came from the Bahamas, played high school in Arizona, then he plays college at Arizona State. I mean, it's almost scripted for him to go to the Suns perfectly. I kind of want a little bit of a mix-up.
Yeah.
Like, maybe see, maybe Doncic, go number one because, the coach of the Suns is his former Slovenian coach.
I mean, look.
I actually was really hoping that the Suns would trade the pick. I know it sounds weird. I know it's safe to go with Ayton, but I was like watering at the idea of them trading it away and maybe some Dragan Bender or someone else to go along with it and try and get Karl Anthony Towns, because that you can convince Booker to stay if you bring his best friend and a guy who would very much complement his style of play in Karl Anthony Towns. I think they have enough assets to offer Minnesota something interesting, because obviously Minnesota is not working with what they have, and that may be a little premature on my part, but I just didn't see them competing what I thought they could do.
I mean, when you're analyzing the draft like we're doing, DeAndre Ayton at number 1 is a good choice. But as a fan of the NBA, I wanted to see more drama. The draft is supposed to be entertaining and exciting. Yeah. When you're a fan,
last year there were trade
I was hoping Doncic maybe would mix it up and go 1 and just shock people. Ayton at 1, it's a good story. It's a solid story. The whole Arizona, not born and raised, but he came and played high school and college, and now he's playing the pros there. I thought there could have been more of a mix-up that would have been interesting. We also got a good story, like you mentioned, with Bridges going to Philadelphia. His mom works in the office in Philadelphia. And then immediately after that big family celebration, the mom was so excited and all that, he gets traded.
Yeah, that was pretty messed up.
But I like his fit. I like his fit. I like
Suns?
him with the Suns too.
Yeah, I think he's a day 1 starter for the Suns. I will say this. I don't know what the 76ers are thinking, because Mikal Bridges not only fits that story written in, I was raised in Philadelphia. My mom works for the Philadelphia organization. It's for the human resources. She's the vice president for human resources. He's been around the organization. He played at Villanova. It just made sense for him to go to the 76ers. Everyone said that was the perfect fit. He ended up slipping. They ended up selecting him. It's perfect. It's exactly what they need. They need a guy who can play defense and is a prolific three-point shooter and a good scorer. He's not elite three-point shooting, but he is really good. He was very solid in college. And what happened, he's exactly what they need. But then they're like, no, we're going to trade. And I think what they're doing...
Now, they traded for another prospect who was
their number 2 option.
Who was their other guy that they were looking at. They brought him in for workouts. So it wasn't a bad thing. For them, they figured we get more by getting a guy we also wanted and also getting, additional picks.
Zaire Smith he's no joke. He's a solid player. I think Mikal Bridges was just perfect.
Yeah.
It was everything they needed. But I think what the thing was that they had Mikal Bridges as their number 1 option and they had Zaire Smith as their number 2. And what ended up happening is they said, we're getting a first-round pick from Phoenix if we get Zaire Smith. So we get a number 2 option and a first-round pick, and that's a little more appealing considering the fact they think they may have the assets to maybe get a Kawhi Leonard.
I like that
trade
move.
For someone like that.
They're trying to attract LeBron. I like the move of going and getting an extra pick.
They're not getting LeBron.
Well,
that's a story for another day. But I don't.
Fair enough.
If
you're there, if you're in that office, you want to believe you still got a shot at LeBron.
I think the more realistic
build
target is I think they have enough assets to go after Kawhi Leonard, and by adding another first-round draft pick, you add something else. And if you don't get him, you get Zaire Smith, who's your number 2 option.
Yeah.
No, I think another first-round pick's no joke, and especially from the Miami unrestricted, and I think that was 2020, I believe.
Yeah, and
that's 2 years from now. Miami could be a garbage team. Who knows?
That's a good point. I don't mind the trade. I don't think it's a bad or particularly great trade. That one wasn't bad. What shocked me the most, and we kind of skipped over it earlier, is the Doncic Trae Young swap between Atlanta and Dallas, because I knew that Dallas wanted Doncic. Did not know Atlanta wanted Trae Young that bad to get him so early, especially when the mock drafts projected him later. I
honestly was believing. I'm a Kings fan, so I was afraid that Vlad Divac was going to select another European player from former Yugoslavia.
Right.
And be like, oh, okay, now you're playing to the stereotypes. Great. But I'm glad when they selected Bagley. But I was 100% sure that Doncic was going...
Let's backtrack. Let's talk about Bagley first, because that's a good point that you bring up. And, being a Kings fan like you are, how happy can you be that they took the safe, smart pick and went with Bagley?
Okay, well, I was absolutely thrilled. I nearly had an aneurysm. Not gonna lie, it was a little messy there for a minute, but I was so happy because I was thrilled when they moved up to 2 from 7 in the draft lottery, and I was so happy that we were in this position to select, and I was afraid we were going to trade down because we've traded down 2 consecutive years. I just don't think you trade down when you're this high. I think you just take the best talent available, and he's perfect for what we need. Marvin Bagley III gives us everything we need. We were 28th in rebounding. It gets us that, and he's the best rebounder in the draft, hands down, in my opinion.
One of the better scorers.
His second jump is insane. He was a 2010 guy in college.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. 21 points, 11 rebounds. He was dominant. And on the offensive board, I think he's the best by far on offensive rebounds. He gives him everything the Kings need.
Lots of room for improvement for Bagley. He needs to put on maybe a little bit of size. Free throw shooting, in college was pretty shoddy.
I think the biggest question marks is the free throw percentage is pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It was ugly. That was some straight up Shaq numbers a little bit there for moments, but he's 70%. It's not unrepairable. Drummond can make 20%.
He was in the 60s. He's a 60.
Oh, is he 60%?
62. 62 in college is pretty shoddy.
Yeah, 62. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty shoddy. But Drummond made a 20% improvement. Chris Webber was a horrible free throw shooter in the beginning of his career, and then improved it over his career.
As much shit as the Kings get, their player development has proven to be okay. Buddy Hield is turning into a pretty decent player.
Of late, because they fired their entire player development team the 2 years ago.
And I really like what they have there with the head coach. He seems really focused on grooming these young guys the right way. And not trying to rush it.
My one concern is I like Jaeger as a coach, but my one concern, just final note in that, is that I'm concerned he is a slow tempo guy. He came from that Memphis system, which was very slow, grinding, and now his team is one of the fastest point guards in the league right out of the bat. De'Aaron Fox. Now you got a rim runner and
fair as a coach.
Rim roller, and Marvin Bagley plays very fast.
That's fair as a coach. I'm talking about as far as his focus on player development. He seems to be grooming these guys the right way.
Yeah.
I like that. The press conference with Marvin Bagley, him, and Divac. Jaeger really impressed me as someone who's trying to build all of these young guys. And they have some really good young guys there in Sacramento at building them the right way.
I will say one thing about Bagley, though. They were forced to play a lot of zone because of his inability to guard man-to-man in college. And that's why Duke ran a very zone-heavy defense, which is a little concerning. But...
yeah, considering the NBA is not a zone game.
Yeah, it's not. It's very man-oriented. So you got to wonder, is he going to be able to guard a guy? I don't know if
that's the thing. He has
3.
pretty decent college block numbers, but some of those are those roaming blocks, which in the NBA, if you're playing strictly man, they're harder to get. Not that you can't get them. We see guys like LeBron
if you
go get them.
But for bigs, if you can keep up with a guard or a wing player, you can get some of those roaming blocks a little bit.
I like that. So let's move on. Let's talk about Luka Doncic and Trae Young. Go back to what we were talking about earlier. Starting with Luka Doncic, I like his fit in Dallas. I like him being kind of the Aaron Rodgers to Brett Favre.
Weird comparison, but okay.
Yeah, but I like that. He's kind of the guy that Dirk's going to groom to be the guy in Dallas to take over for him. And I kind of like that, and that's a cool story.
I'm a huge fan of how he plays in that offense. I think Dallas runs they can run a very good tempo, and there's a lot of ball movement. Him with Dennis Smith Jr. I think is going to be a great backcourt combo.
Who better to mentor the highest touted foreign prospect in Luka Doncic, then arguably the greatest foreign international player in NBA history. It's a good story. It's a good fit. I like it. The shocking part of this whole story is the trade for Trae Young that Atlanta made, because Atlanta in the 3 slot, they trade down to 5, but they're essentially saying we're taking Trae Young as this high level prospect.
Okay,
a top 5 prospect from a 3 slot trading down. And Trae Young, to me, look, he's got the numbers, and the numbers always look good, but the numbers can fool the eye. He has a lot of mistakes in his game.
We all forget Jeremy Fredette, also drafted by the Kings. Just throwing that tidbit out there. One of the best college careers ever, and ended up being nothing. Now, I don't think their games are similar, but what I will say is that Trae Young is, I feel like, one of the more, I would say, risky moves. And though he has the stats, his shooting is good. I think that he could either get bullied and look completely out of place in the NBA, or he could be a hybrid version of Steph Curry.
Now, everyone puts out that Steph Curry comparison. And we forget, I think, sometimes with our kind of revisionist history type of thinking that, Steph's so dominant now. But when Steph came into the league, he got bullied. Because of his size and everything. Those first few years were really rough for Steph.
Yeah, but I think he's smaller than Steph ever was when coming in.
Yeah.
And he's a lot more turnover prone. And that's saying something.
The turnovers are an issue. For Trae Young,
led the league in NCAA.
That's what scares me. But he was a great passer, too. And part of that could be teammates. We talk about how big an impact teammates make. Trae Young didn't have a star-studded cast in Oklahoma like Marvin Bagley or one of those players did in Duke. He didn't have those guys to kick to. So sometimes you're kicking to guys that aren't expecting the ball, the way he passes, and you're going to have turnovers because the offense doesn't.
Well, I will say this,
complement.
Though. If he's turning it over this much now, in the NBA, when the passing lanes get a little bit tighter, it becomes a little bit harder to pass the ball, and you can't make the same passes you made in college because they're going to be there, they're going to be on you. The passing lanes will be much more narrow. You won't be able to make the same passes, and if you're turning it over at such a high rate now, your assists are going to go down immediately. That's going to happen.
But here's something to think about too. Before you finish, here's something to think about too. What you're saying is that Trae Young's turnovers are concerning in college, and that's going to be even more so in the NBA because it's harder. But also something to think about is his usage rate in college accounts for some of his turnovers because he has the ball so much, and he's the guy throwing the passes. His usage rate's going to go down dramatically in the NBA. Yeah, but a lot of those turnovers are going to disappear.
I don't think it'll be too dramatic, though, because he is going to a team, the Hawks. The Hawks will be giving him as much opportunity as he wants. He's going to get a starting role day one.
I just don't think he's not going to have that Harden-style usage rate where he's just with the ball in his hands all the time.
Not right away. I understand.
So I think his turnovers shouldn't be as bad.
But like I said,
but his assists won't be as high.
It's not as much about the amount of time he's going to have the ball in his hand. I think it's more because the defense that's going to be being played is going to be much harder. The passing lanes always get harder. They're better defenders. But you forget a lot of these guys that are coming into the NBA are all-time great defenders in college, and then they come in and they improve the game even further. It's going to make it harder. You're not playing college guys, and you can make this. There are like mental lapses. Like them not playing. I mean, zone. The fact that they even play zone defense shows that there's way too much leniency in the defense in college.
I can agree with that. So let's move on. So the next big thing for me is Mohamed Bamba, Mo Bamba, going to the Magic. That was kind of a shock. We talked about that earlier. But here's another part of that story. He refused to give his medical records to the Memphis team, saying pretty much, I don't want to play in Memphis. And
same thing with Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. also did that, and then he was gave after getting drafted, they gave him medicals when he knew he was going to go to the Grizzlies. I think that's right. I think it's a scare players try to do because they're like, oh, I don't want to go to your team, but if they get drafted, you're going to that team.
But do you think that played an impact in the Grizzlies selecting Jaren Jackson over Mo Bamba, or do you think they just wanted Jackson more than they wanted Mo Bamba?
I honestly feel, if you just look at Jaren Jackson Jr. versus Mo Bamba, I feel like Mo Bamba is the superior player. And the reason I say that is because though Jackson can shoot from 3-point range, and though Mo Bamba's shot was suspect multiple times throughout college, he has restructured it after the season. He started restructuring it. I saw some video on that. Looking like a better shot. That's not why you draft him, though. It's not because of the shot. Both these guys are defensive linchpins. They're going to be in the post, getting you blocks, locking down your defense. And if you ask me, who would I rather have? I'm taking Mo Bamba.
Now, here's the thing.
If you're the Grizzlies, you got to wonder, taking Jaren Jackson Jr., is it because you want him more offense? You want him to be able to stretch the floor? He's a little bit more versatile in how he can defend, to where he can defend 2 to 5 instead of being like Mo Bamba's like 3 to 5.
Here's the difference for me. Is Mo Bamba has, I think, a higher ceiling.
He does.
I think Jaren Jackson has a little lower ceiling, but I think he has a lot higher floor. I think Jaren Jackson's a much safer pick. He's not going to break out the way Mo Bamba could if Mo Bamba gets a shot, if Mo Bamba puts a little bit more weight on to go with his crazy wingspan. If Mo Bamba does those things and develops the right way, he could be a much bigger star than Jaren Jackson Jr. But Jackson, I think, is the safer pick.
You want to know what I was expecting Memphis to do at 4? I was expecting them to move up. Or maybe, I thought maybe Doncic would maybe slip from 3, maybe in a weird way, because they were starting to show that he was showing some slippage. But I was expecting him to go after someone like Doncic. Reason why is he would be a very good complement to Mike Conley.
He's played against the Gasols.
He's not really a primary ball handler, even though he kind of took that role sometimes in Slovenian, in the ABA for Real Madrid. But I
think he's going to be off ball.
I think he's more of an off ball secondary ball handling option, and I just thought it made more sense because everyone's saying that he's the most ready player right now coming into the draft.
And when you look at those early teams, which ones are the most ready to play now? You got to say Memphis when Conley and Gasol are there, and you add Doncic into that, you're talking about a playoff run. That's a playoff run team, in my opinion.
If we're talking about ability to make a playoff run, I don't know. Grizzlies were competing very much so last year. This year they kind of slumped off because there was an injury with Conley. There were some issues. But I'm wondering what their window is, because sure, you add like Jaren Jackson Jr. and you're getting a little bit younger, and they have a young team for the most part, but they were competing a year ago. I think they still believe they should be competing next year.
So do you think Doncic?
But I don't know how many more years you got with Gasol and Conley.
That's a good point. So do you think that going with Jaren Jackson Jr., a safer guy, a higher floor, lower ceiling, and not as ready as a Doncic, do you think that that's signaling that maybe Memphis is looking to rebuild? And look at post-Conley Gasol?
I think, because Conley's got a little bit more on his contract. I think he's still got some time on his contract. But I know Gasol is only got, I think he has next year, and then the year after, he's going to be a free agent. I may be wrong on that, but I think Gasol, once Gasol's contract's done, Memphis trades him or just something, and they try and get some asses back for them. I think the rebuild's going to be after this, because I don't think Gasol and Conley are good enough to really sustain a good playoff team. They're a little bit older. They definitely want to start getting younger and kind of transition to a younger team, maybe look for the future a little bit. But that's why I thought they would get Doncic, because Doncic is young and he's a guy who can give you instant success now. I thought it made more sense. Jaren Jackson Jr., I guess if you're just going to go with the flow of so many good bigs being available, but...
Yeah. And look,
he is a defensive player, which is kind of that grit and grind thing of Memphis that they're starting to get away from a little bit. They're a little bit more stretching now, a little bit more free flowing in the offense. But
right. And you talk about Doncic being a ready now player, and one of the things, I was starting to get sold on this guy. Getting closer to the draft, watching more coverage, and the looking at more statistics, I was starting to get sold on Doncic. I was hoping, as a fan of the entertainment of the draft, that Ayton wouldn't get picked and Doncic would get picked in Arizona, because I was really starting to get sold on this guy. And I think he can be amazing. But it didn't end up panning out. But I think you're right. I think Doncic is a ready now player. I think even at 19 years old, he's shown that he can compete at a high level. Dragic, which is a all-star as of this year, there were some injuries, and how he got into the all-star, that's to be debated, but he is an all-star.
He played alongside Dragic.
And he played alongside him, and
team.
he was the primary option.
Yeah.
Dragic deferred to him.
Well, funny thing
And he has high praises for him.
Random fact, Dragic is actually they were roommates when they were playing for the Slovenian team together. So, they've been...
Right, they have high rapport, and Dragic has a lot of respect.
That assassin's mentality that he would defer to him to score in those big moments.
And Dragic is a good
ended up being
scorer.
great because they won.
And Dragic is a good NBA scorer. We're talking about a guy that's averaged over 20. This year he had a little bit slip in scoring, but you're talking about a really solid scorer, a solid NBA player, and for him to have that high praise for Doncic just says everything.
There's definitely a lot of possibilities with Doncic. Let's move on and talk about Colin Sexton going 8 to the Cavs. I'm guessing that that was one of their biggest fits. They needed to fill in that the point guard spot because I don't know, had some inconsistent play since Kyrie left.
I like Sexton. Like you said earlier, I thought he was the best point guard in the draft, better than Trae Young, in my opinion. The only real story here to me, him going to Cleveland, the only thing I found interesting was the whole debacle with him taking the number 2 jersey, which was Kyrie's jersey. But even that, there's not much entertainment value there.
It's not like he picked it just to be a jerk.
No, and I know. It makes some good potential drama, but there's nothing there. Kyrie he diffused that drama right away. He was like, this is bullshit.
I thought it was funny on draft night, though, how when they asked Sexton, just do your best pitch to LeBron. It's like he's pitching anything. It's like LeBron cares about
LeBron's
Sexton.
not listening to Colin Sexton.
Yeah, it's like, who
Let's
cares?
be honest. And that was a weak pitch, by the way. I thought that was awkward.
He was nervous. So.
He was nervous. He was put on the spot, and it was awkward. Right after Sexton, this is only an interesting story because it's New York. It's the second largest market in the NBA. So it's
one of those franchise teams.
It's a franchise. So this is only interesting because we're talking about New York's pick. And Kevin Knox getting booed.
I thought Kevin Knox was good from everything I saw about him,
and it's a decent fit.
I am a little concerned because I feel like one of the most valuable traits that any player can come out of college and have is the assassin's mentality and having a very strong work ethic. I feel like guys with strong work ethics usually have good careers because they always want to improve. They always want to get better. And the fact that I've been hearing from a lot of sources and stuff, and that they're saying that they're Colin Sexton doesn't really have that mentality. Sometimes he looks disengaged.
Knox, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, Kevin Knox. But
right.
That's a concern with me. But I still feel like he was such a talented scorer.
Okay, but here's
people saying that he has a high floor always intrigues me because usually guys with high floors, to me, I think Jason Tatum, and I think high floor, you're going to make the most immediate impact, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Here's my question to you, really, is Kevin Knox gets booed. Porzingis gets booed. If you're New York, can you win with your fans? When you make a pick, are you just destined to get booed and to lose?
Not if you're Steph Curry.
No, but I'm saying New York's office. Is their office just destined to lose out? With the fans, they're never going to get their approval. They're always going to get booed, no matter who they pick.
That always intrigue New York.
They could have picked Ayton at 9, and the fans would.
You want to know? I honestly feel like could have gotten a good reception. Trae Young, and I know I was expecting him to slip to 9 and get picked by the Knicks. They need a point guard. They need a point guard who can score. I know they got Ntilikina, and they got Moutier now. It's yay, Ntilikina.
I like Moutier, but his game's not fully developed yet.
I don't know when it will be though.
That's the thing.
It's another example of a guy who doesn't have a shot and has all the other abilities, has the physical game,
but doesn't have the talent
smart.
of someone like a Ben Simmons. He doesn't have a shot, but he doesn't have enough complementary game to make up for it. The only other really good story to me is
the Michael Porter slipping to 14 and
and I like
the Nuggets,
pick for the Nuggets. I like Michael Porter there. I was sitting there going okay, when is this guy getting drafted? You look at the Knicks, who took Knox, could have taken him. But there's some injury risk there. They probably wanted a safer pick, guy with a higher floor. But there were lots of teams that could have fit Michael Porter into their system.
One of those teams, I feel like, was the Clippers. Though they have Gallinari at the 3. I don't feel like he's a long-term fix. I feel like there's so much upside with Porter, considering as he was the number 1 prospect coming out of high school. Until Marvin Bagley changed his classification. But he was the number 1 prospect coming out of high school. Everyone thought he was going to be either 1 or 2, like consensus.
Yeah.
And then the injury, and then time in Missouri, and it just did not go well. And I don't know, his stock slipped, and then there was the whole thing with his hip, and it's like, oh,
my thing is
good?
With Michael Porter, time will tell. We have to wait. We haven't seen enough in college against the competition that you want to see these guys play against. We know he's dominant from high school perspective. Time will tell.
I will say
Give
this,
it time.
though.
And I like the idea that they're throwing out there about potentially redshirting his first season.
I will say this, though, about Michael Porter Jr. I think that the fact that he is 6'10", 6'11", got the height. He's able to put the ball down on the court and be a good dribbler. He's got great scoring potential.
Yeah. And a good build.
And a good build. I think the Kevin Durant comparisons, I think is a little too much, but I think he shows a lot of the physical similarities, and his game does show some similarities. But I will say, if he ends up being even 2/3 the player Kevin Durant, you will have had.
Yeah, but I don't like that
14.
comparison. We've talked before off camera about. I just don't like that comparison with Michael Porter Jr. being Durant. I don't see it. I don't see the athleticism. I don't see the explosive driving, slashing to the basket. I just don't see it with him. He looks like a good player to me, but like I said, time will tell. We'll have to see.
All I know is the risk worth the reward for the Clippers when you have 2 possible selections, and it's I don't know. I think they could have risked it because they had 2 picks there. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Is that the Nuggets obviously got a steal there, but
right.
I think overall,
speaking of steals,
it's good.
Let's talk about what I thought was the steal of the draft in Aaron Holiday going to the Pacers. I know he slipped a little bit more than what people had thought that he would. But we're talking about a 20-plus point a game score in college at UCLA, playing good competition, playing Ayton in Arizona. You're playing good competition. I thought he was going to be valued higher. He can pass. He can score. He's got the ability. I think he's the steal of the draft, at least in the first round, in my opinion, for the Pacers. I think they got a good fit there. I think
when you look at Aaron Holiday, the number 1 thing you see out of him is his defense. That is what they're bringing him in there.
Yeah.
So he's a great defender, just like his brother, Drew Holiday. I think what this would give them is it gives them a really solid defensive-minded, tough, fighting option to play alongside Victor Oladipo.
And he can be off ball. And I like that.
And I like that too, considering the fact that Victor Oladipo he's kind of transitioning to be a little more ball handling. He has a lot more ball handling.
Right.
If you're watching that Cavs series, he had the ball for a lot of the time, bringing it up the court, running the offense.
And if Oladipo's out there and he's having a good game and people start to double him, you can defer and let Aaron Holiday run the offense and handle the ball, he can score.
I am really impressed with the defensive team that's starting to kind of assemble in Indiana. They're getting a lot of pieces that look really good for defense. Forget Oladipo was a steals layer this year, and then they had a lot of good. Bojan Bogdanovic is a solid player. He's a good defender. Young is a great defender. Thaddeus Young at the 4. He's a great defender.
No,
I
like that Pacers team. Obviously, we're not talking about them having the star power to be in the conversation.
But they're definitely
they're building
a good-looking team.
It's looking good.
The fact that you're in a rebuild or a retooling situation and you can still make the playoffs and nearly beat the Cavaliers, had to take the Cavaliers 7 games to lose. That is definitely an impressive start for a retooling for a team.
The only other possible steal for me, and I wouldn't call it as much a steal as Aaron Holiday, but I liked Robert Williams to Boston as late as he went, because you're talking about one of the best blockers in NCAA. He's a great rim protector, good defender, solid player, good rebounder. I liked him slipping as late as he did, and I think Danny Ainge for Boston, he just seems to pick the right guys. So I think that's a good fit. I think it's a good pick.
I think he definitely slipped, considering the fact that you were talking. So I saw some things where they were saying he was going to go in like the teens, like somewhere between like 15 and 20.
Yeah, and he definitely could have been lottery.
27. It's like that. I mean, there are a lot of concerns with him, but I think
attitude's a problem. Motivation seems to be a little, kind of like a little bit of a Boogie Cousins type situation.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if their games is similar, but
as far as the attitude
the
and mentality, yeah. So there's some concerns there.
But I think it's worth the risk at 27.
At 27,
because considering that the upside can be so great if you can just, Another thing I want to mention, the Hawks surrounded themselves with some great shooters this draft, and I know it's not going to be totally talked about a whole lot, but Spellman at 30 for them is a great. He's a good scorer and a good shooter. I'm not going to pronounce this right. Forgive me. Hodder from Maryland. I've watched some of his tape. He is a really good shooter.
Really good shooter.
There's a lot of
really
shooting
good
there.
shooter.
Now that with Trae Young, it's they are moving to a very new style, lots of threes.
Right.
Type of offense. And another thing I want to say, just real quick, because I'm mentioning this, it makes more sense, the Trae Young thing, when you look and you see that the GM of the Hawks was once in the Golden State front office. So he was there when he saw Steph Curry kind of emerge. And I think that kind of persuaded him because he's seeing a lot of the same features in Trae Young. All right, so next we're going to move on and talk about the NBA award show. There are a lot of good...
Before we get there, there was one more thing I wanted to say about the draft that I thought was interesting. And I know you don't want to talk about it and you hate it. Are you happy LiAngelo Ball did not get drafted?
I am 1,000 times happy.
I am so happy.
There's nothing better than one less ball in the NBA.
To me, it's so great. And I hope it... I know it's not going to affect LeVar's ego. But God, I hope it does. I hope it slows his ego down a little bit.
The only thing that could make me happier is... LaMelo doesn't make it either.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about
moving on to the NBA award shows. There were a lot of good things I saw from this. Let's start with Coach of the Year. So Dwayne Casey winning Coach of the Year.
Now you mean awkward moment of the year?
Yeah,
because it was that speech.
Woo! I personally felt like Brad Stevens was the Coach of the Year in my mind. I think how he was able to keep that Boston team competitive, even though they lost Hayward first game of the season, first quarter of the season.
Yeah.
And then they lose Kyrie for a huge chunk of the season, and they were able to stay competitive. I think up until the Eastern Conference Finals, where they had to go out in a Game 7. Though you can't count the playoffs, I think even if you just look at the regular season, he had the most impressive.
I like season. Brad Stevens. The fact that that this is voted on before the playoffs makes a difference. And Casey was the guy I thought was going to win. But then he gets fired.
He did lead Toronto to a franchise record.
Franchise record, great wins. But he gets fired after the award is pretty much done, it's voted for.
I'm not 100... he got fired before they did the coaches vote, where the coaches vote on who they believe is the Coach of the Year, and then he won that vote as well, where the coaches thought he should be the Coach of the Year. And with that, that's got to be pretty freaking awkward. Because do you remember when Toronto sent him a thank you, good, congrats, Coach, on winning Coach of the Year. I know you're fired already, but congrats.
Yeah, and it was an awkward acceptance speech for that award. It was funny, kind of, to me. As an outside viewer, I thought it was entertaining.
I just think it's weird. How can you win Coach of the Year and fire your coach? That just doesn't make any sense.
I think it says 100 times more about the Toronto Raptors organization than it does about Dwayne Casey. And I like the fact that he took shots at him, because I would have. If I was that guy and I just did what he did and then I got fired, I would want to take shots at that organization too.
I will say
I have no problem.
But what are you firing Casey over? You're firing him because the mindset, the culture of Toronto is getting too intimidated by LeBron and the Cavs, or they just don't have that killer mentality.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're firing because of that, then why do you hire his assistant Nurse?
Yeah,
If it's about the culture, you move away from an outside source, bring in an outside source. You don't freaking hire inside the coaching staff. Nurse.
that's a whole discussion.
That doesn't even make sense. If you're firing him for this reason, you can't hire him for the same reason. You can't hire his replacement for the same reason.
Yeah.
A guy who's been contaminated by that culture.
And I think we forget part of that's on the players. And look,
well,
it's a lot easier to fire Dwayne Casey than it is to get rid of Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. It's a lot easier to fire the coach. Put the responsibility on him. Put it on his shoulders. Say it's your fault and fire.
Well, that's always happened in the NBA. Though. They always blame the coaches.
And I know
for
that.
the decision.
But if we're being real here, some of that mentality and some of that not being able to get over LeBron James,
it's a lot on the players.
Where were they? They have to.
Well,
step
in the
up
first
to
game
do
of
that.
the series, you see them miss in the last 3 minutes, where they miss 12 consecutive shots or something. That's just ridiculous.
They have to step up in that moment, and to me, part of that's on the players. And yeah, you can say, well, the coach is supposed to empower them to get that mentality to lift themselves up over LeBron, but they got to do it too.
I think
they
the
got to
coaches
put the
have
work in.
a much more hands-off approach to the NBA now than they used to. There's not as many plays written up nowadays, and there's a lot more just letting the players do what they do.
You have exceptions with guys like Pop, who, I mean, let's say Pop was in that situation. Maybe Pop riles DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry up to get over LeBron.
I think it was a mindset thing for them. They were so intimidated. You could just see look on their faces. They just looked like they didn't want to be there after the first game.
Yeah. I agree.
I think if they really want to make a change at that franchise, they're going to have to move to one of those players.
I agree.
All right. Next, we're going to look at the Kia NBA's most improved player. The runner-ups were Spencer Dinwiddie from the Brooklyn Nets, Clint Capella from the Houston Rockets, but the winner is going to be Victor Oladipo from the Pacers.
Kia, not a sponsor, by the way, but hit us up, Kia. Just saying. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But I like Victor Oladipo. I like him winning this award. To me, this was between Clint Capella and Victor Oladipo.
I don't feel like it was ever a conversation.
It wasn't.
I think it was Victor Oladipo. You go from being
Victor Oladipo was a really good player. I've known that for a while about him. I did not know Clint Capella had this level of talent in him. But yeah, there wasn't a competition. This was Oladipo's.
Well, there were always signs of Victor Oladipo being a good scorer and a great defender in Orlando, and they got traded to the Thunder, and it's he played against with Russ, and he kind of took a step back, didn't really look assertive. He looked all right. I mean, there's talent there. Then he goes to even the GM of the Pacers, who replaced Larry Bird, when he came in, he said that his expectations were to win anywhere from 30 to 40 games. He was not expecting a lot. Victor Oladipo comes in there, becomes an all-star for the first time ever, coming out of nowhere. No one was expecting it.
Yep.
Phenomenal. Leads the league in steals. I mean, I don't even feel like this was a competition. I feel like this is just what should happen.
No, like I said,
you don't go from being nothing to all-star.
This was Oladipo's award. It was his award in my mind. All I was saying is that Clint Capella surprised me because I didn't know he had that in him.
Well, I felt
you're
like
right.
what he gives you is exactly what you lost when you lost Howard, though. I think when Howard left, the Rockets knew Clint Capella could fill that role.
No one knew Clint Capella could be Howard level.
Well, it's not that he's just a good shot blocker and a good rim runner. That's all they really need from Howard when Howard was here anyways.
Right.
All right. Next, we're going to move to the Defensive Player of the Year. A lot of people felt like Anthony Davis could have won this, but I felt like from the start it was Rudy Gobert's to lose.
I'm happy Rudy Gobert won it.
I mean, he's been close 3 consecutive years.
He's one of the best defenders in the league. Everybody knows it. It's well known, and that's what he gives to the Jazz. I kind of felt bad for Anthony Davis because I knew he wasn't in the MVP conversation. He wasn't in the conversation for MVP, really. But I like the fact that he, had a shot at the Defensive Player of the Year, but I really don't have a problem with Gobert winning. He deserved it. I'm perfectly happy with him winning that award.
Yeah. What I will say about Gobert is that you kind of knew, you know his defensive impact because when he was injured and then when he came back, they showed that the point differential of when he's on the court and when he's not is like a 20-point differential.
Oh yeah, it makes
That's insane.
It makes a huge difference.
With Gobert on the floor, I think they are debatably the best defensive team in the NBA.
Yeah, and you have him alongside Donovan Mitchell. It's a good team, and I think that.
Well, Derek Favors is a solid defender. Inglis can do good defense. Now they brought in Crowder to give them good defense. Yeah. I mean, they're a tough-nosed team. And coached so well by Quinn Snyder. I think they just
Jazz
fits the system.
Is a team to talk about at a later date because I think there's some things there. But we'll talk about that later. So let's move on. Let's talk about the Sixth-Man Award.
Yeah, so the Sixth-Man of the Year award went to Lou Williams. And that's not a shock to me. I mean, he should have been an All-Star this year. If we're talking about All-Star snubs, he had an All-Star caliber year and didn't get in. And I think because a lot of the more name-brand guys, when the injuries started happening, the more name-brand guys came in instead of him. That feels like a rip to me. I feel like Lou Williams should have been an All-Star this year. He played his best year of his career. I will say this, though. How many games can you play as a starter and still qualify for the Sixth Man of the Year award?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
At least 20 or more games as a starter for that franchise.
That's a very good
I just
point.
don't understand. It's like you're not really a six man. You're a kind of starter. Gives you more time. Gives you more shots. I mean, there's a difference. Eric Gordon, you can even say the same thing because Eric Gordon was the runner up, but Eric Gordon's the same way. Like when Chris Paul was gone for the first 10 games of that season, he was the starter every night.
And they play certain rotations where you start the game as the starters being like Harden and Gordon, and Chris Paul comes off the bench, or vice versa. And so, yeah, there is that, but we know who the starting unit in Houston is. It's Chris Paul,
the Clippers,
and
that's why.
That's a good point.
The Clippers, he could be the starter for the Clippers any night,
and that's a good point. And that's why, in my mind, I thought Eric Gordon was going to win this award.
Well, I am actually glad he didn't because Eric Gordon won it last year. I feel like Lou Williams really increased the level of play this year, and I feel like he being the runner-up last year and Eric Gordon winning, and now Eric Gordon being the runner-up and him winning this year kind of just makes sense.
So do you think that that's the NBA balancing the books, though?
No.
Do you think that sometimes a guy could deserve to win an award back-to-back years, but because they want to give it to someone different, they give it to another really close option? I'm not saying there was a big difference between them, and they balance the books.
But they're reporters and broadcasters the ones voting on this.
That's fair. I'm just saying that. So sometimes I think we talk about LeBron James fatigue when it comes to the MVP, but sometimes in these lower awards, I feel like there's guys sometimes that deserve to win the Defensive Player of the Year every single year, but that doesn't mean they're going to.
Yeah.
Because they want to give it to a guy.
Well, you look at
who deserves
Gobert, he probably should have won it last year too. I mean, I don't know. Draymond Green had a great year.
It's just interesting to point out. So let's talk about, to me, the most controversial one of the evening in the Rookie of the Year award.
Yeah, so this is a lot of layers to it. So let's start out with saying, do you consider Ben Simmons a rookie?
And it's interesting to point out that was Donovan Mitchell's thing, right? That's what he kind of campaigned on.
Made jokes
he
about
showed
it.
up in a van that said "rookie?" I mean, and it was funny, and it was all good and fun. But it is a thing we have to talk about. The whole redshirt freshman. Blake did it and won Rookie of the Year. There's a precedent for it. But it does make a difference.
I mean, Joel Embiid almost did it.
But to me,
redshirted 2 years and almost won it last year.
To me, regardless, I thought Donovan Mitchell was going to win this award. Hands down, I had locked in Donovan Mitchell as the award winner.
I would have voted for Donovan Mitchell as well. And the reason why is I think he means, and this is saying something, I think he means more to his team. He is the centerpiece of his team. He is the offensive driving engine. He averaged more points. He averaged about 20 points per game.
Yep.
3 rebounds, 3 assists. And then you look at Simmons and a little bit less points, but he had 8 rebounds, 8 assists.
Yeah, you got a 16, 8,
it makes it, I see where Simmons got it, but Mitchell's just the guy for the Jazz. And it just makes sense for me.
Most of the commentators were saying Simmons, he's great at everything except for he doesn't have the shot. But he's great at everything. And a lot of the commentators were saying he passes on the eye test. to me, no one passed on the eye test more than Donovan Mitchell.
That makes sense. I mean, See, here's another thing I want to bring up about this. If you include the postseason and you look at the playoffs, Mitchell wins it easily. Him in that series against the Thunder.
Now, it's interesting
him against that
you
series
say that.
against the Rockets. I mean,
it's interesting you say that.
I don't even think Ben Simmons would be second. I think it would be Jason Tatum second. If
that's what
I'm.
That's what I'm getting to. Because it's interesting that you say that. If the playoffs were included, because if the playoffs are included, boy, Jason Tatum came close.
Yeah, he's definitely second place.
I thought, maybe Jason Tatum's going to swing
breaking
my vote.
Larry Bird's consecutive 20-point games as a rookie was definitely impressive. But I think the only thing that's more impressive than that is Donovan Mitchell in his first 10 games in a playoff. Of his scoring being that of like Will Chamberlain,
19 points,
Kareem, Michael, the all-time greats. It was
and by the way, I'm just gonna say, favorite play of the playoff is Donovan Mitchell's shot that he rebounded himself and then dunked. That was, to me, my favorite play of the playoffs.
That was pretty embarrassing.
It was pretty cool. It was beast. But it's also interesting to point out these awards are not including the playoffs. We know that about these awards. They are regular season awards. And so Tatum really, he wasn't in the conversation as a regular season award to me. But Donovan Mitchell, I thought for sure he had it over.
And that's why they actually vote on it before the playoffs start.
Right.
But after watching the playoffs, it's hard not to be influenced and say, wow, Donovan Mitchell or Jason Tatum.
But even if we take the playoffs out and we're just looking at regular season, I thought Donovan Mitchell was the guy. You can make the argument that Ben Simmons, he has a better team around him, and so maybe his assist numbers
he definitely has more offensive talent around him with JJ Redick at the 2, and then you have Joel Embiid just there like
Donovan Mitchell
is a good player.
I don't know. I can't remember. Just throwing this out there. I can't remember a season in which a rookie scored 20 or more points and lost the Rookie of the Year to someone who scored less than 20 points. Usually when you score 20 points as a rookie, 20 plus points, you're winning that award.
Yeah, and what I think that actually says about the league is that we're transitioning to a kind of a state in where we value rebounds and assists so much more, where triple doubles are becoming like more valued than like a 30-point game.
Yeah.
It's like that's why,
change.
That's why when the finals happened, when Durant was almost trying to give Curry that Finals MVP, when Curry got the 30 points, he still averaged a triple double and he still won it because it's like the triple double is still considered one of the gems, best things you can do for your team in a game.
Well, Durant
and Ben Simmons,
triple-double, right?
Ben Simmons was like top like 4 or 5 on triple doubles for the entire season, which is really impressive.
Yeah, no, I don't hate Ben Simmons winning the award. I more hate Donovan Mitchell not winning it. I would have liked to see, and I know you don't see this very often in awards, a co-rookie of the year, maybe a split vote.
I am not a fan of the co-rookie of the year. That seems like a cop-out to me for people who can't make up their mind.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of that. I think it was definitely close this year, but it's like the whole thing with the rookie of the year, like the MVP last year, everyone was saying, oh, Westbrook and Harden co-MVP. And speaking of which...
Well, hold on, before you go there, because you said it's close, and it was close in my mind between Ben Simmons and Donovan Mitchell. I thought Donovan Mitchell had the edge, but we should point out, the voting wasn't close. Ben Simmons won in a runaway blowout Rookie of the Year. It's not like Donovan Mitchell was close to Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons crushed him in the voting.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. I feel like it's because a lot of people who are on maybe the fence a little bit, like, we're all voting Ben Simmons. Like, they knew that it was tough, but they were all going to vote Ben Simmons, the people who were on the fence.
And part of that story, too, and this is another point, is Ben Simmons, and this is part of the story for me. I know it doesn't actually play into Rookie of the Year, but Ben Simmons is a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
We expect this type of level from him. Donovan Mitchell was drafted 13th last year. And that's to me, that adds on to the legacy of what he did.
I will also say this. It's to be expected that you're a little bit more accustomed to the NBA and Ben Simmons because you got a year redshirt and people say, oh, he's still a rookie. Yeah, but he had a year redshirted getting his body ready for the NBA. He was more physically ready for the NBA than he would have been a year
Preparing
before.
with NBA players, coaches,
practicing
trainers.
With his players, getting knowledge, watching games.
It's a huge advantage.
It's a huge advantage.
And But my thing is that Donovan Mitchell being drafted 13th, that's part of the story, in my opinion. If I was voting, that's part of the story to me that goes, damn, guy drafted 13th and he's this good. Oh, he has to win it.
Yeah,
But
that was yeah, I get that. All right, moving on. Last but not least, we're going to be talking about the NBA Most Valuable Player, the ever controversial, not really, James Harden won it. Okay, so James Harden won it. I don't feel like that was a shocker to anyone.
No,
a lot of people who are really, let's just say, into LeBron. On LeBron a bit, like, oh, he's the best player in the world. He's the best player in the world. He should win MVP. I felt like, as the award is constructed currently, I think James Harden should have won it outright. I mean, there's just no way you can even make a case for anyone else.
right.
As it's constructed currently.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree.
If you're going to make it into a season award and then you're going to make it into best player in the league, then I understand your case.
Right.
But as presently constructed, we are so fixated on stats with these MVPs. I mean, look at Westbrook.
Yeah.
Anyone going to say Westbrook's the best player in the league? No. But he had the best season, so that's what we give the MVP to now.
It's tough to me because I've grown up watching guys that I know deserve to have more than one MVP that don't. You look at Allen Iverson.
You look at
Shaquille
Shaq.
O'Neal.
Oh my gosh,
Kobe Bryant, who's one of the greatest. And those guys don't have multiple MVPs. But the way that it is now, Harden winning it the way he won it, it's about the gaudy numbers. Who puts up the gaudy numbers. Harden's over 30, got close to a triple-double. He's a great assist guy, great rebounds guy. His numbers they jump off the page to you, and that's what it's about. It's not about actually how valuable they are to the team. It's almost a misrepresented name of the award.
To be fair, Harden is super valuable to the Rockets. Like, he is the centerpiece of the Rockets. Everyone wants to go to the Rockets because of Harden. I mean, Chris Paul went to the Rockets because of Harden. It's not the system. It's not anything like that. It is Harden's team. He is super valuable to the team. I understand that. And I am super glad that he won this MVP because, come on. If he would have lost to LeBron this year, 3 consecutive years being the runner-up or third-place finisher, it's like, oh my gosh, talk about not good for your heart. Like,
that would have sucked. My only argument...
Especially having all those Rockets players out there to support him, that would have been embarrassing.
My only argument... Yeah, and after having the MVP shoe already
Adidas,
already
the
done,
MVP
they
shoe.
had it already done and boxed and ready to start shipping
That would have
those
been
out.
bad. That would have been a bad
Would have
recall.
been bad. To me, the only argument against James Harden... And again, it's key to remember that this is a regular season award. The only argument against James Harden happens after the award is supposed to be done being accounted for, and that's in the postseason. Harden seems to have trouble with the postseason.
Yeah.
It hurts his legacy, but it doesn't hurt him winning the MVP because the MVP is a season award.
I will say this, though. It would have been a lot closer if they would have counted the postseason.
If they counted the postseason, LeBron would have won it. Or should have won it. LeBron should have won it if it was a postseason included award. But being the regular season award that it is, you got to give it to Harden. All I'm saying is Harden has yet again shown to me that he doesn't have what it takes to be a champion.
The problem
in the league.
adding postseason in, we talk about postseason and for like rookie of the year and stuff like that. Problem with that is if your team's just not good enough and you get bounced out at the first round, you have no exposure. But if you get to like the finals, like LeBron did, the exposure is great. Like, and people forget Anthony Davis played phenomenal this playoff series and just looked great. Him and Drew Holiday totally made the Trailblazers look like fools, sweeping them out in the first round.
I understand that argument. I understand that argument for Rookie of the Year because you don't expect the Rookie of the Year to take you to the playoffs. When you're talking about the MVP of the league, you should be taking your team to the playoffs at least, if not taking them somewhat deep.
Well,
and
I mean that's to be expected, and you won't win MVP if your team doesn't get in the playoffs.
No, half the teams make it into the playoffs. More than half the teams.
Yeah, you have to get into the playoffs to
and
be MVP.
If you're an MVP, you can't be on those 14 teams that don't make the play. That's just not. That's not how it should go. So that's kind of a weird argument because to me it's like. I think you should include the postseason when you're looking at MVP because you do expect the MVP to get there. And then we want to see if you're really the most valuable player, you should be doing something in the playoffs. You should be impressing people in the playoffs, and that's where Harden lacks to me. But I have no disagreements with him winning the award. I'm glad he won it.
I'm glad he won it.
Especially after what happened last year. He had such a great season, and Russ just had a better season. It's like that old saying, it was great defense but better offense. And Harden had a great season. Russ just had a phenomenal season. And so Russ deserved the MVP, but Harden, I felt like, God, he needs this MVP. He needs it bad.
Yeah, it would have been a little crushing for all the fans. Like I was hearing a lot today, James Harden's kind of like the people's MVP. In a league, the NBA's best MVP is LeBron James. I mean,
and
I feel like that's what everyone knows, but I don't know. As presently constructed, it is very gaudy. It's very stats-based. So, all right, well, that's going to do it today for us. If you guys are interested in more content, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube,
Facebook
also.
Yep.
And we'll catch you next time on the Ryan Kai Show.